It's Friday, October 12th. Let's get smarter.
The Washington Post is reporting that the Turkish officials have audio and video recordings that prove the journalist was killed inside the Saudi consulate.
Turkey believes that Saudi Arabia sent on 2 chartered planes a 15-member hit team, that they were laying in wait.
First, I want to find out what happened, and we're looking. Again, this took place in Turkey, and to the best of our knowledge, Khashoggi is not a United States citizen.
I don't know what the White House is going to do, but I am fairly confident that I know what Congress is going to do. It's going to react very strongly towards this.
We don't like it even a little bit. But as to whether or not we should stop $110 billion from being spent in this country, knowing they have 4 or 5 alternatives, 2 very good alternatives, that would not be acceptable to me.
What he's really thinking is they give me a lot of money.
With Jared and with Trump, it's just completely an open door. If you're spending with us, you can do anything with impunity.
If in fact this is true, that he was abducted and killed at the direction of the Saudi government, it will destroy the relationship as we know it. I would do everything I could to punish the Saudi regime if they did in fact kill this man.
Stocks are roaring back this morning after 2 days of stomach-turning plunges, more than 1,300 points on the Dow.
I think the fundamentals are still very strong. The U.S. economy is strong. U.S. earnings are strong. So I see this as just a natural correction after the markets were up a lot.
When stocks are overvalued, it's like a toddler standing on top of a dresser. You want to get the toddler down without the toddler falling down. And right now what we're seeing is the toddler is kind of climbing down. Now the president's complaining the Fed's raising rates and also touting a very strong economy at the same time. So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance there. This is exactly what the Fed should be doing at this juncture.
How often does Brendan Greeley have a toddler on a dresser?
Were you interviewing somebody?
I was interviewing Brendan Greeley, toddler on a dresser.
How did the toddler get on top of the dresser? The whole thing's weird. All right, we have another very serious story we're covering. Speculation is growing about the fate of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi after he walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and seemingly walked off the face of the earth.
His columns for the Washington Post were a sometimes biting critique of the Saudi government and especially the Crown Prince. Quote, Saudi Arabia wasn't always this repressive. Now it's unbearable. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince wants to crush extremists, but he is punishing the wrong people. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince is acting like Putin. Saudi Arabia is creating a total mess in Lebanon. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince already controls the nation's media. Now he's squeezing it even further. And here's another. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince must restore dignity to his country by ending Yemen's cruel war. Those are just a few
of the things that he's written. Now, that doesn't, believe it or not, that doesn't even put him into the ranks of the most critical people of Saudi Arabia. He wrote what Saudi Arabia can learn from Black Panther this spring. The article ended asking, will Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who likely will soon become the king of his country, use his power to bring peace to the world around him?
But now his columns, they're gone. After this final image of him walking into the Saudi consulate, the final Washington Post bearing his name that was this blank page where his column would have appeared.
All right, we're going to take a quick look into Saudi Arabia's record on human rights and press freedoms. Please pay close attention to this because this is a very boiled down look, but it's important. Let's start with women's rights. The Crown Prince has made a public show of allowing some women to drive, though a man must still be in the car. And women can attend sports events, both hailed as huge victories, but it's the equivalent of a paralyzed person being able to wiggle their toes. It's a start. It's not all that much. Women are still held under male guardianship, where a man, usually a father or husband, approves a woman's school enrollment, chaperones her if she studies abroad. Companies customarily check with the male guardian if a woman wants to work outside the home, and the guardian controls a woman's ability to open a bank account or sign a lease. In the courts, a woman's testimony carries less weight than a man's, and a woman can be arrested for not listening to their guardian. And that's just one issue. That's just on the issue of women with Saudi criminal justice. People can be arrested for vague, undefined crimes because there's largely no penal code. The country relies on Sharia, but it's interpreted by authorities. Freedom of speech is severely curtailed. A Saudi blogger was sentenced to 1,000 lashes for running a website advocating free speech in the country, and others have been sentenced to prison for protesting and working with international human rights organizations. The kingdom also holds close ties to Wahhabism, a denomination of Sunni Islam that is considered ultra-conservative and which forms much of the underpinning of the ideology that groups like ISIS use.
ISIS. Say it again, Ali.
Yeah, 9/11 victims, by the way, have long tried to sue the Saudi government for alleged knowledge or involvement in the attacks on the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, allegations that the Saudis deny, but the United States has not allowed to happen. Now, this is probably where the rubber hits the road right now, the U.S.-Saudi relationship. It's a feedback loop.
Please turn up the volume for this.
Yeah, all right. So the issue is the United States sells the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia defense products. The United States buys oil in return. Just last year, the Trump administration signed $1 billion deal to sell missiles and other equipment to the Saudis. The United States, over that time, has imported an average of 810,000 barrels of oil per day this year. Okay? So at current prices, those imports are worth more than $10 billion.
And that's the stunning thing, Ali. Saudi Arabia, the crown prince, the royal family behave not necessarily like this about this specific journalist every day, but the atrocities we're talking about are commonplace. And you see that business relationship?
That's why.
We
It's all
okay
money.
with it.
Both countries make a lot off of each other, so we are not critical of Saudi Arabia, and as we'll discuss later, of many other countries that do these sorts of things.
Joining us now, Robin Wright, journalist and senior fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center. She has known Jamal Khashoggi for years. Robin, a Turkish official tells NBC News that Turkey is now 100% certain Khashoggi is dead. You say the last time you spoke with him back in August, he was worried about his life. What did he tell you?
Yes, he actually talked about the fact that the Saudis wanted him out of the picture, as he put it. He was very concerned for his life. And we've been talking about this for more than a year. And I thought, frankly, that he was exaggerating the dangers since he had been in Washington in exile for quite a while. And it seemed that, that was a less vulnerable place for him to be compared with the kinds of arrests we've seen across Saudi Arabia. And of course, he proved to be right, and I think in ways that even he didn't understand.
Robin, you have been covering the Middle East for a very long time. Jamal Khashoggi doesn't rank amongst the biggest critics of Saudi Arabia. His criticism was, I might even say, measured. He sort of thought of himself as a force for good in Saudi Arabia. Why him?
Well, first of all, I think you're right that he was a reluctant dissident. He actually continued to support the monarchy, continued to support the House of Saud, as it's known, but he was very critical of this particular group of leaders, headed by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, because of their autocratic ways inside the country, dealing with the sweeping arrest. Or you remember the Ritz-Carlton arrest, where they picked up several dozens of businessmen, even princes. But it was also the reckless foreign policy. This was the invasion of Yemen, which is an open-ended war, often called Saudi Arabia's Vietnam. The forced resignation by Saudi Arabia on Saudi television of the Lebanese prime minister, the tensions with one of its closest neighbors, little Qatar, that over and over, Saudi Arabia was taking actions that Jamal was very concerned about. And by speaking out, he in many ways humiliated the crown prince at a moment that he was trying to consolidate power. Father is aged and ailing, the king, and there's widespread speculation that there will be some kind of transition of power in the not too distant future. And so Jamal, being in the West, was in the face of the opposition and someone that obviously the kingdom felt was in some ways a threat to them.
The kingdom,
tragically and erroneously.
The kingdom, specifically MBS, and Jamal was writing in the United States. MBS is very keen to have Americans, specifically influential Americans, business people here, think highly of him.
Right.
He bragged about his investments in this country. I want you to take a listen, please.
America is a sovereign nation, and our first priority is always the safety and security of our citizens. To the best of our knowledge, Khashoggi is not a United States citizen. We are not here to lecture. It's not our country, it's in Turkey, and it's not a citizen as I understand it. We are not here to tell other people how to live.
Saudi Arabia, and I get along great with all of them.
Instead, we are here to offer partnership
They buy apartments from me.
based on shared interests and values
They spend 40 million, 50 million.
to pursue a better future for all of us.
Am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much.
Okay, so let's make something clear. The Crown Prince MBS has major investments here, and there's the president over and over saying how great that is. How difficult is it right now that the White House has had a pretty blurred response to this situation, given how the president has spoken about them before?
And it took a week for the president of the White House, the State Department, to really make any kind of statement questioning the fate of Jamal and what role the kingdom might have had in it. And I think it's an embarrassment. But the reality is that the administration really depends on Saudi Arabia, particularly MBS, as the interlocutor on the Arab-Israeli peace process, which is pivotal to Trump's foreign policy, as you point out, to arms sales, and to the counterterrorism strategy. Remember that Saudi Arabia was the very first destination of President Trump when he became president, among much pomp and ceremony. And the kingdom, in turn, under MBS, has this vision of developing Saudi Arabia that will depend on billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from foreign investors. And there's a big conference next week, in fact, in which he's pulling together, whether it's technology, industry, media, organizations, to try to give them the stamp of legitimacy as well as the investment that he so badly needs. So there's a relationship that is interdependent.
Not just foreign policy. It could be Trump or Kushner. Business ties. Jared Kushner did meet privately with MBS
for a long time. Spent a whole overnight with them. Robin, good to see you. Thank you so much. Robin Wright is a writer of with the New Yorker and a senior fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center and has known Jamal Khashoggi for some years.
Thinking about him. Next, it has been a very wild week in global markets. We're going to take a look at why Wall Street took such a sudden turn. Many warning of a correction or a downward move to a bear market. We'll see. Maybe it's just a little bit of volatility, which, by the way, we needed.
All right, we're looking at it right now. The Dow's up 0.6 of a point. We'll be right back. You're watching Velshi Rule live on MSNBC.
It's really sad that the stuff that I've been trying to tell government officials for quite some times is now escalating into what it's escalating into, pertaining to seeing the true side of some of the most wickedest, evilest, cruelest people on the planet. And this is the very thing that the Bible predicts of the Persian Empire, of the old Persian Empire, pertaining to Balaam and Balak, over in the first 4 chapters of Revelations, that is talking about pertaining to going all the way back to the book of Daniel, to whenever the hand wrote on the wall. You really have to get really deep involved in understanding biblical Bible prophecy, because of the teachings that Christ said, that when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, then know the position that we are in here upon to this planet that we call Mother Earth. These are the tattletale signs. The proof is in the pudding towards what is going on. And of course, whenever you have a journalist that they know that has been assassinated by some assassins over there, it's pretty obvious that that things is definitely in a negative spiral. Especially whenever you watch the characteristics of the Saudis, not just in the regard of 9/11, but I mean, they attack hospitals. They attack school children. Just last week, they attacked a whole busload of children. Money is one thing, but dignity is something else. And that's one of the reasons why that this country has faltered and failed the way that it has, because after the assassination of President Kennedy, we have demoralized our morals to the sense of allowing for other countries to become dominant figureheads on the national stage throughout this planet. And these people, as far as I am concerned, they're thugs. They're terrorists. Their ideology is the very thing that has corrupted and polluted and contaminated the rest of the world in their thinking, because they are of an evil source. The Sharia law is of a evil source, period. And it really saddens me that it puts us it puts the world in peril of not knowing from one day to another towards what these idiots are going to do with all these freaking bombs and all these missiles and all the stuff that we have sold them. They're burning the candle at both ends. They're not to be trusted in any form or fashion. They're evil. Their motives are evil. Their intentions is evil. They've always been evil. It breaks my heart in the 21st century to know that we have evolved into such of a deep entrenchment that even the Bible talks about, that in the last days that they will entrench a trench around us to the point that we will be entrenched. And that's what happened throughout the past 4 or 5 administrations since, really and truly, since 1983. And I don't know if anybody else has noticed this or not, but since 1983, since the San Francisco earthquake, and since other spiritual Bible prophecy predictions has come true, you can look at the escalation of Mother Nature that has just absolutely exploded the way that we're seeing now 100-year storms coming now every year, or every sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. To see 400, 500, 600 tornadoes drop out of the sky in one day, to see these humongous droughts, famines, floods, all these other horrible things that are occurring, all this has generated since 1983. If you'll analyze the natural catastrophe events, along with the political and the spiritual events. I mean, look at the Catholic priest. Look at the Pope. Look at what has went on with that association, with all the pedophiles and their practices. It's been horrifying to watch how that these type of institutions have cankered away in their original practices. It's really, really sad how that we have seen things evolve the way that they have evolved. Money is not everything, my friends. I got news for you. Christ said that if you gain the whole world, but yet not lose your soul, what have you gained? Because in this lifetime, which is a very short time span in comparison to eternity, what have you gained if you're the richest person upon to the planet? You haven't gained nothing. Because your soul is now in hell, screaming and hollering for an ounce or a drop of water, and you get none. People need to get their priorities right, not only here in America, but throughout the world, pertaining to what's going on, pertaining to this evil demonic doctrine that the Sharia law has created, that has escalated all over the world, pertaining to their ideology. People need to wake up. It's time for the world to wake up to these type of underhanding, undermining, illegitimate, forceful, evil, demonic ways, and call black black and white white. In other words, be a straight shooter. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, sounds like a duck, probably odds are it's going to be a duck. Good luck to all of us as we walk off into this journey of life in the golden year of the Jubilee in 2018. Shalom.